American Comics. My Warhammer Simulator Chapter 11-20. The unbearable pain seemed to have aroused Vichy's ferocity. Google search reading. He forced his eyes open. He stretched out his arm regardless of anything, trying to grab back the submachine gun that fell in front of him. Unfortunately, Vichy, who was caught up in the impulse, ignored the blind spot of his vision. A figure on top of the wooden box suddenly jumped down. While the person was still in the air, a huge black and dull saber chopped down with force. Snap! Accompanied by a faint, crisp sound and a suddenly rising tragic howl. Vichy's palm and half of his forearm completely left the human body. He fell into the cold embrace of the concrete floor. Swish! At the same time, the narrow and dull giant saber turned again with the wrist of the knife holder. It stabbed into Vichy's chest. In the blink of an eye, Vladimir Vichy was completely nailed to the wooden box. Who, until this time, Rorschach, wearing a red scarf and painted on his face, was completely relieved. His whole body went limp, he almost fell to the ground. A night of running had almost exhausted Rorschach's physical strength, especially when he killed the other two people before. Not only did he overexert his left arm and strain his muscles, but he almost let the other party break free from his restraints, causing a greater crisis. That's why Rorschach wanted to use bloody scenes to stimulate Vichy. He wanted to increase the psychological pressure on the other party. In the end, pressure would lead to fatal mistakes. Otherwise, Rorschach would not be so cruel as to sacrifice his skull. He has never been a cruel person. Rorschach, with a complicated look in his eyes, glanced at Vichy, who was in a dying state and vomiting blood. He shook his head slightly. Then, Rorschach tentatively moved his injured left arm and found that the problem was not serious. Then, he immediately began to rummage through boxes and explore the surrounding wooden boxes. From the moment he sneaked into the warehouse, the simulator, which had been silent, kept giving reminders. Open black lens bracket. There are resources that can be put nearby. Please recycle them as soon as possible. Close black lens bracket. 20 minutes later, Rorschach completed the initial exploration. Most of the wooden boxes contained luxury goods that were smuggled to avoid taxes. However, 5 of the boxes contained brand new firearms. Curious, Rorschach reached out and picked up a submachine gun that smelled of pungent gun oil. The simulator interface immediately appeared in front of him. Open black lens bracket. Harmful substances. Guns can reduce the cooling time by 1 hour. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Do you want to absorb harmful substances? Close black lens bracket. Rorschach slightly widened his eyes. The resources required by the simulator are guns? At this time, more than 10 hours had passed since Rorschach's last simulation. The cooling time has ended and the simulation can be started at any time. Rorschach chose to absorb and planned to see what changes the simulator had. Current cooling time that can be consumed, 1 hour. 1 gun for 1 hour? Rorschach's eyes lit up and he no longer hesitated. He quickly absorbed all the guns in the warehouse, even the guns of several dead people. Open black lens bracket. Current cooling time that can be consumed, 6 days and 5 hours, 149 hours. Close black lens bracket. Staring at the final number displayed on the simulator, Rorschach couldn't help but smile. According to the ratio of 1 hour of cooling down to survive 1 day, 149 hours can simulate 149 days. Nearly half a year. Enough for Rorschach's combat power and ability to survive to be much stronger. But, the most important thing is, the American continent may lack all resources, but it has no shortage of guns. By the way, I wonder if drugs are considered harmful substances? Rorschach, who has a bright future, suddenly remembered what Vichy said. There are still 10 kilograms of white flour hidden in the warehouse, waiting for Rorschach to find. I just don't know if the simulator needs this kind of thing. Rorschach, who is full of energy, seems to have forgotten the slight pain. He searched and found the black wooden box in the corner. But when Rorschach pried it open, he found that it was empty. There was nothing in the box at all. Well, why should I be so naive to believe in a gang leader? Rorschach couldn't help but laugh at himself. However, just when Rorschach was about to turn around, I seemed to hear some noise. Da. Rorschach, with his eyes narrowed, suddenly raised his leg and kicked the black wooden box beside him. Boom! The black wooden box fell to the ground. It completely exposed a hidden basement door. Rorschach looked solemn and listened attentively. Da. Sure enough, a series of light knocking sounds were coming from the basement. Kidnapped hostages? Or animal smuggling? Rorschach couldn't make a judgment in a short time, so he decided to open it and see first. He took a deep breath and grabbed the handle on the secret door with his right arm. Hooalala! Accompanied by the sound of metal friction as the hinge turned. A suffocating smell of excrement hit me in the face. However, when the light in the warehouse shone into the basement, Rorschach's eyes widened instantly. He stared at the scene in the basement without moving, and fell into silence. There were a group of children inside. A group of children of different skin colors. A group of expressionless children, only about 7 or 8 years old. Most of them had messy and worn clothes, and their faces were covered with obvious traces of tears. It was as if the sound and light of the basement was opened. It broke the despair spreading among the children. Pairs of terrified, confused, or sad young eyes. All looked at Rorschach alone. And a moment later, Rorschach, with black and green oil paint on his face. Suddenly, he showed an extremely bright smile. "You, we're all saved. Don't be afraid. Uncle Red Turban is here to save you." At this moment, a child holding half a stone in his hand suddenly asked cautiously. "Hello, are we saved?" Rorschach looked at the voice. He found that it was a beautiful little girl with a pair of sparkling eyes. Rorschach took a deep breath and tried to suppress the anger that surged up again in his heart. He smiled and nodded, saying, "Yes, you are free. The bad guys outside have been killed by Uncle Red Turban. If you are not afraid, you can come out and see. The bad guys who bullied you have even lost their heads." Perhaps Rorschach's words comforted him. Or perhaps the ignorant children finally reacted. In short, a dozen children were like cars that were wound up again. They all rushed up with their hands and feet, in an instant. Rorschach, who was standing in place, seemed to be surrounded by a large group of fart spirits several feet high. While they kept shouting excitedly, the dirty little claws kept grabbing Rorschach's clothes and pants and shaking them back and forth. At this moment, Rorschach, who tried to stay calm, couldn't help but have a headache. This won't work. He still has to clean up the entire murder scene and try to minimize the traces left. But what about the child in front of him? Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Bang bang bang. Rorschach, who was in a hurry, suddenly clapped his palms and made a crisp sound. After making sure you have captured the attention of all the children, Luo narrowed his eyes and asked vividly, "Children, do you miss your parents? Do you want to go home?" "Think, in no mood." "What is thinking?" A total of 11 little heads raised their necks. The crystal clear eyes on the dirty little faces kept blinking. For a moment, the children seemed to have forgotten the little game of spinning around Rorschach. Luo raised his eyebrows, nodded with satisfaction, and continued. "You are all obedient and good children. That's why Uncle Red Turban came to save you. Now, the fat and white police officers are on their way here, and they are carrying a lot of chocolate cakes in their police cars. However, only the most obedient and good children can be allowed to eat chocolate cake. Are you good children?" In an instant, the children with endless longing in their eyes shook their little heads. A person who is chatty but clumsy in speech means that he will be obedient. Rorschach raised his hand and pointed to the warehouse door, and said with a smile, "Uncle still has some things to do, so now everyone go to the door and wait for me. Okay? Remember not to leave without permission, otherwise there will be no chocolate cake. Do you understand?" "Clear. Chocolate. Chocolate." The children answered in unison, their little faces full of joy for sweets. Before Rorschach could speak, he gave instructions. I saw the children taking the initiative to hold each other's little hands. They lined up obediently and walked towards the warehouse door with small steps. Standing there, Rorschach looked at the children's excited backs and couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Dealing with children is much more difficult than dealing with gang members. Rorschach quickly turned around and ran towards the location where the battle had just occurred. Laugh. Rorschach, expressionless, drew out a long and narrow giant saber. Swing the blade and shake off the blood. Then, he easily pulled out all the nails on the body and head, and stuffed them into his pockets. Rorschach brand homemade blow dart, a necessary tool for killing people and silencing them. There was also a body that had been strangled, so there was nothing to clean up. Rorschach frowned and thought for a moment. After confirming that nothing was missing, he walked to the table not far away. Under bright lights, stacks of cash bills stand out and are attractive. Rorschach didn't hesitate at all. He grabbed the black duffel bag that was thrown on the table and started packing. Just think of it as the travel expenses reimbursed by the gang. After all, even riding his bike to Brooklyn was a physically demanding job. A few minutes later, Rorschach held a bulging 1 million banknotes and took out Sergei's mobile phone. He first searched a few numbers on the internet and then dialed. "Hello, this is the New York Times. In Warehouse 10 near the Brooklyn Bridge, there are many missing children kidnapped by sportswear gangs." Rorschach deliberately lowered his voice. His voice was hoarse and deep. After getting the accurate answer, Rorschach immediately hung up the phone. Then, he made anonymous reporting calls to famous media outlets such as the Daily Bugle and the New York Post. On the last call, Rorschach contacted the police. Then, Rorschach picked up the heavy duffel bag and walked out. The reason why Rorschach carried out such a complicated operation was because he did not trust the New York Police Department at all. There must be high-level officials and shady police officers colluding with criminal organizations. So, he borrowed the power of the media. Let the people who are coerced by the breaking news deal with the New York police. In this way, the children standing in the spotlight also have an extra layer of protection. Prevent gangsters from jumping over the wall. Wow. Rorschach once again received enthusiastic cheers from the children when he opened the iron door of the warehouse. Perhaps most of the enthusiasm was due to the chocolate cake. However, when the tired Rorschach glanced at the innocent smiling faces and sincere eyes of the children, the slightest worry in my heart disappeared with the wind. It's 4 o'clock in the morning in Brooklyn, and the sky is overcast. A heavy rain that has been brewing for a long time is coming. In the shadow of a bush 500 meters away from warehouse number 10. Rorschach felt relieved as he looked at the police cars with their lights flashing and rushing towards the warehouse. He looked down at the half-stone in his palm. A slight smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. This is the reward given to him by the children. Worthless, yet priceless. Rorschach squinted his eyes and took one last look at the location of the warehouse. Then he quickly stood up and escaped into the thick darkness. Now, everything has nothing to do with him. Red Hood retires. Ordinary citizen Rorschach is back. Not long ago, we were passing the Brooklyn Bridge. The changed Rorschach left only the Catachan saber and the stone. Everything else was thrown into the fast-flowing East River and disappeared without a trace. Military boots, headscarves, bloody nails and steel pipes, as well as 2 borrowed mobile phones. Originally, even the clothes and pants Rorschach wore should be thrown away. But because there is no preparation, Rorschach, who didn't want to ride his bike naked, had to go home to deal with it. At this time, the dark sky began to drip with fine raindrops. Rorschach carried a shoulder bag. The back seat was loaded with a heavy black luggage bag, and he rushed towards home. After Rorschach carefully opened the door of the apartment and stepped into the living room, the heavy rain fell outside the window. The rapid raindrops kept hitting the glass, making crackling sounds. After a sleepless night, Rorschach, exhausted, completely relaxed. At this moment, the door of my aunt's bedroom was closed. It seemed that she had not woken up from her sleep yet. Rorschach tiptoed through the dim living room. He took the heavy luggage bag into the bedroom and hid it. Then, he took off his clothes and went into the bathroom. A few minutes later, Rorschach, who was drowsy after being washed by hot water, he forced himself to soak his clothes in disinfectant. The purpose of doing this? To destroy the remaining blood stains on the clothes. After finishing all this, Rorschach quickly returned to the bed. As soon as his eyelids closed, a slight snoring sound echoed in the bedroom with the sound of raindrops. Reset. When Rorschach opened his eyes again, the familiar sound of the calculator seemed to echo in his ears. It was still pouring outside the window, washing away all the dirty things in the city. Rorschach picked up his phone to check the time, 11:10 in the morning. Finding that he had only slept for about 6 hours, Rorschach didn't want to get up at all. He closed his eyes again, wanting to enjoy a nap in the rainy weather. However, Rorschach lay in bed and tossed and turned for a long time. The sleepiness that slipped away could not be returned anyway. Rorschach suddenly opened his eyes. He lay on the bed and turned on the simulator. Open black lens bracket simulation starting, close black lens bracket open black lens bracket current identity. Katachan recruit. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Do you want to come in this identity? If you refuse, you will come immediately. Close black lens bracket. Rorschach thought for a while with his eyes narrowed, and chose to refuse. He now needs powerful firearms and equipment. Or something more powerful. For example, Astartes 21 strengthening operations. After all, with the emergence of simulator resources, Rorschach himself must become stronger as soon as possible. Only in this way can a positive cycle be formed. Compared to robbing the warehouses of large arms companies, the criminal organizations all over New York are obviously more suitable. Open black lens bracket. You have landed in the Warhammer universe. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Time 40. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Location Storm Starfield Krieg planet. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You set foot on the surface of the planet. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You don't have time to observe the surrounding environment, and the lethal radiation visible to the naked eye penetrates every cell in your body. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You begin to feel dizzy and have difficulty breathing. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are on the verge of death. Close black lens bracket. Your eyes are blurred, and a short figure seems to appear in your sight. The other person is wearing a strange-looking breathing mask and a brown military waterproof coat. Open black lens bracket. You feel difficulty breathing and try to ask for help. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are hit on the head by an engineer's shovel, and blood is flowing. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are on the verge of death again and fall into a coma at the same time. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are unconscious and dragged into an underground tunnel by the other party, deep underground. You are captured. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You survived by chance and did not die. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. On the first day, you gradually woke up from the coma. Before you figured out the situation in front of you, a middle-aged man who looked like an officer came to you. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. He called himself Colonel Ewerton, the commander of the 83rd Regiment of Krieg. Not long ago, you appeared on the death battlefield of Krieg with an unknown identity and mysterious origin, and were accidentally captured by a loyal Krieg soldier. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You showed your loyalty to the Emperor and tried to explain that everything was arranged by the Emperor. Colonel Ewerton believed you. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You suddenly found that during your coma, your injuries had completely healed. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You proposed to Colonel Ewerton that you wanted to learn more combat skills and survival knowledge. Colonel Ewerton agreed to your request without hesitation. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You heard Colonel Ewerton's explanation that the nuclear fire had destroyed the surface of the entire planet. The rebellion that swept the planet was temporarily destroyed, but the remaining rebels still resisted stubbornly, and the loyalists suffered heavy losses. Close black lens bracket. It is an honor for the Krieg Corps to join you. To fight for the Emperor, the Krieg Corps is willing to pay any price, Colonel Ewerton said. Open black lens bracket. You followed Colonel Ewerton confidently and left the place of imprisonment. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You did not notice the fanaticism and shock in Colonel Ewerton's eyes. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The next day, in an underground tunnel on the front line of the battle, a Krieg watch captain wearing a breathing mask and a steel helmet and a black and green waterproof coat became your superior. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You tried to communicate with him, but he said nothing. He just led you to the equipment storage location and gestured that you could choose whatever you wanted. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You accidentally discovered that almost all the equipment was covered with dried blood, but you didn't care. You quickly put on the same equipment as the Krieg soldiers, a steel helmet, a breathing mask, military boots and a black waterproof coat. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You carried more wooden-handled fragmentation grenades, and you picked up a Lucius Type 98 laser gun, which you couldn't put down. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Your superior handed you a heavy serrated bayonet. You tried to ask him if he had any long-handled weapons such as an engineer shovel, but he still said nothing. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You were fully armed, and you followed the watch captain to join the battle against the rebels. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The firefight in the underground tunnel was fierce and bloody. You subconsciously tensed up and kept learning the action skills of the Overwatch captain. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You were unexpectedly ambushed. A lone rebel rushed towards you. Your laser gun ammunition quickly ran out. The rebel was beaten into a pulp. You were breathing rapidly and were still in shock. Close black lens bracket. The Overwatch captain watched everything in front of him. After the short battle, he or she told you that the Lucius Type 98 laser gun was powerful, but the battery capacity was too small. You needed to learn to control the amount of ammunition during the battle and maintain combat effectiveness at all times. Open black lens bracket. You suddenly realized that the other party was not unwilling to talk, but unwilling to communicate with a mysterious stranger. You killed the rebel and proved your loyalty. Now, you are comrades in arms. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. On the third day, you cut the throats of 2 rebels with a heavy sawtooth bayonet in a battle. Your wonderful performance even attracted the attention of the Overwatch captain. The taciturn other party tried to ask you for tips on using knives. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. On the 4th day, you joined the infantry squad under the leadership of the captain of the watch. The task of the 10-man squad was extremely difficult. The rebels were frantically attacking the underground nest of the loyalists. Your task was to stop the enemy's advance and try to attack back. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You seemed to gradually adapt to the fighting methods in the underground tunnels. You began to use the shadows of the tunnels and a large number of wooden-handled grenades to successfully kill a small number of rebels. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. In the interval between battles, you received a reward that the captain of the watch had found specifically for you, a very handy engineer shovel. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. In the first week, the battle in the underground tunnels became more and more brutal. The attack of the rebels was like a tide, without stopping. Your squad lost 3 soldiers in succession. Even if you asked repeatedly in the past few days, you never knew their names. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. In the second week, the smell of burnt flesh and lasers colliding filled the entire underground tunnel. You have become silent now. The damned rebels actually used heavy weapons, laser cannons, in the dark and narrow underground tunnels. Even if they were turned into corpses by the powerful recoil, the crazy rebels would cause huge losses to the infantry squad. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. A Krieg soldier who fought with you tacitly was blasted into flesh and blood dust, and not even his relics were left. You fell into a rage, carrying the heavy, purgatory gun, and rushed into the underground tunnel occupied by the rebels. You killed a large number of rebels, occupied an underground tunnel, and successfully completed the mission of the infantry squad, but you had no emotions except sadness. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. In the 3rd week, Colonel Yurton heard about your heroic deeds and suggested that you join his guards to get more elite combat training and try to learn command knowledge. You rejected Colonel Yurton's proposal and accepted the recommendation of the Overwatch captain despite Colonel Yurton's strong opposition and became a Krieg grenadier. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Overly sad, you seem to have entered a strange state, crazy but calm. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You seem to be longing for death, but with inexpressible loyalty, you can only pour out the endless anger of the Emperor on the rebels who keep counter-attacking. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This time, You only paid a few fingers to recapture the underground tunnels belonging to the rebels again. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Your outstanding performances one after another seem to have attracted the attention of the rebel commander, and your next battle will become more and more difficult. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. In the 4th week, Colonel Yurden personally issued an order, ordering your infantry squad to hold the several underground tunnels they had occupied, and there was no order to retreat, unless you chose to give in and join Colonel Yurden's Krieg Guard. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You tried to explain to the Overwatch captain, persuading him to temporarily disobey orders and leave you alone to defend, but he did not respond. He just led the 2 remaining Krieg soldiers in the infantry squad to silently set up a double-linked heavy logging gun and carry more wooden-handled grenades. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You fell into silence, and silently carried the heavy, purgatory gun, an engineer shovel, picked up a Lucius Type 98 laser gun, entered the tunnel to set up traps, and buried more mines. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The battle that belongs to you and the entire infantry squad has begun. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The roar from the double-linked heavy logging gun was deafening, and the light of the laser gun flashed desperately, almost illuminating the entire dark underground tunnel, as if it were daytime. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. However, countless rebels were like surging tides. Just as one wave was wiped out, another wave rushed out. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. 2 ordinary Krieg soldiers fell beside you. Even though they died, their fingers never let go of the trigger of the laser gun until the battery of the laser gun was completely exhausted. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The battle situation became increasingly critical. You detonated the buried mines. The violent shock wave carried the flesh and blood of countless rebels and hit your waterproof coat. You subconsciously turned your eyes, but found that at some point, the captain of the watch who was responsible for operating the felling gun had half of his body evaporated by the laser gun. Now he kept pulling the trigger with only the last bit of consciousness. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The felling gun suddenly stopped roaring, and the rebels began to organize an attack again. Behind the breathing mask, blood and tears seemed to shed from the corners of your eyes. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You silently carried the battery of the purgatory gun on your back, and your body was covered with wooden-handled grenades. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You retreated a distance, crouched in the shadows, and waited for an opportunity to move. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. In a trance, you seemed to remember the taciturn Overwatch captain, who occasionally recited a few lines of prayer. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Breathing is war. Death is tranquility. Living in shame. Death is atonement. You stumbled and began to recite. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. More and more rebels poured into the underground tunnel. You pulled the fuses of most of the grenades, and jumped out of the shadows. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. In an instant, your roar resounded throughout the underground tunnel. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Krieg. Charge. Close black lens bracket. The flames and fragments of the wooden handle grenade detonated the battery backpack of the Inferno gun. Google search reading. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. A violent explosion occurred, and the underground tunnel collapsed completely. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. While you were blown to pieces, you were also covered by tens of thousands of tons of earth and rock. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are dead. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This simulation ended after 30 days. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This simulation has a retainable option. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. 1. Krieg Legionnaire set, new. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. 2. A bundle of wooden handle fragmentation grenades, 12 pieces. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. 3. Krieg Grenadier combat experience, 1 month. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This simulation time has exceeded 24 hours, and the simulator loss has not been exempted. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Cooling time, 30 hours. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Current available cooling time, 6 days and 5 hours. 149 hours. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Does it consume the cooling time? Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The cooling time has not been consumed, and the simulator enters natural cooling. Cooling can be waived at any time. Close black lens bracket. At this time, Rorschach, who was lying on the bed, couldn't help but feel excited. Even if it's just a short life simulated by a simulator. He was also shocked by his series of choices. Loyalty. What loyalty is this? The excited Rorschach glanced at the reward after completing the simulation. The smile on his lips became even brighter, although he still doesn't have the Imperial firearms he longs for. But a month of Krieg Grenadier combat experience is even better. This is no simple training. It is the battle experience honed by wandering between life and death every day. 2 other bonuses were ignored. Rorschach chose the third option with quick hands and eyes. In an instant, the muscles all over Rorschach's body were trembling. It's like I've absorbed a lot of nutrition and exercise. It expanded a lot again. Not only that, even his bone structure has undergone wonderful changes. The body size of the whole person began to continue to grow. The height actually increased from 1.75 meters to 1.8 meters. A bedboard of 2 meters is not suitable for Rorschach now. There's almost not enough left. At the same time, countless Krieg Grenadier honed their combat skills through life and death. One after another came into Rorschach's mind, and it quickly transformed from a memory into an unforgettable instinct in the body. The spirit and will of a veteran who was fearless in death suddenly burst out from Luo Sha's eyes. Then this spiritual will quickly dissipated and merged, hiding in a deeper place. Rorschach suddenly sat up from the bed and looked down. At this moment, the muscles all over his body were swollen and plump, and his skin was glowing. With a slight exertion, a stronger force than before moves according to the heart. Rorschach even felt that he was more than twice as powerful now as he was a few minutes ago. Ha ha! The excited Rorschach raised his hand with one hand. The whole person jumped from the bed to the ground easily. He waved his fist vigorously. The movement was powerful. However, Rorschach's excitement did not last long. Real problems that kept emerging troubled him. Wearing only a pair of underwear, Rorschach rummaged through the entire bedroom. Only then did he manage to scrape together a few sets of clothes that barely fit. He needs to replace all his clothes. Rorschach kept thinking while putting on his loose and baggy sportswear. Problems that can be solved with money are naturally simple. However, some problems cannot be solved with money. For example, how is he going to explain this to his aunt, who he spends all day with? What about extreme changes in the body? At this time, Luo Sha, who was sitting by the bed and thinking hard, suddenly lit up. Maybe it can work. The neurons in the brain are constantly colliding and rubbing, and a plan that is not a plan emerges. I saw Rorschach bending down and dragging out the black duffel bag from under the bed. The zipper was opened, and stacks of colorful banknotes appeared in front of his eyes. Dash 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 dash. Apartment living room. The frowning aunt was nestled in the sofa, sitting cross-legged. After just one night, her slightly round chin seemed to be sharper and slimmer. The fingertips, which have become rough after being exposed to food for a long time, are pressing the calculator back and forth. Calculate again and again the losses incurred by the restaurant and the additional expenses required to renovate and open it. Although the restaurant's monthly income has always been good, the profit is still considerable. However, all costs and high taxes are excluded if restaurants want to reopen. The aunt had to use the family's savings. Saving money is not just about your aunt's future pension. At the same time, she was also responsible for providing for Rorschach to go to college. It may even be Rorschach's only reliance on marrying a wife and having children in the future. Moreover, Rorschach's parents died too early. They were ordinary people and left no legacy behind. If she is Rorschach's only guardian, if you don't even think about Rorschach's future. So who can help the well-behaved and sensible Rorschach? Thinking of this, my aunt's frown gradually relaxed. She slowly let out a long sigh and murmured to herself, "Sholian, Sholian, you will have a hard life in this life." The aunt who acted vigorously and resolutely made the final decision decisively. Using her own pension to fill the gap first, the share saved for Rorschach remains unchanged. Squeak, at this moment, the wooden door of Rorschach's bedroom made a slight sound and slowly opened. Huh? Aunt looked up and looked in the direction of the sound. But she saw Rorschach, who was obviously taller and stronger than yesterday, walking out with a stern face. If this was not enough to shock Aunt, then, on Rorschach's raised arms, there was actually a pile of colorful banknotes. Aunt, who has always been extremely sensitive to the amount of money, calculated the approximate amount of the pile of banknotes in almost the blink of an eye. It will definitely not be less than 300,000, even for Aunt, who is a restaurant owner. This is also a lot of money. In an instant, Aunt's heart was pounding, and even her breathing became rapid. Rorschach, her eyes suddenly widened, her slightly round chin trembled, and she shouted with a red face. "You, where did you get so much money? Did you do something bad? Rorschach, are you going to piss me off to death?" Aunt had never been so irritable and panicked. Rorschach was her only relative. He was the flesh and blood that she had watched grow up since she was a child and the treasure in her palm. Even to some extent, he was her son, but at this moment, Rorschach, who had always been well-behaved and obedient, suddenly took out so many unknown banknotes. For the law-abiding Aunt, it was too stimulating. However, Rorschach, with a stern face, still said nothing. He just walked in front of his aunt. Bending down, he put a pile of banknotes on the table, covering the bills and notes spread out on it. Rorschach looked at his aunt, who was tearful and trembling all over. After taking a deep breath, she spoke word by word. "Aunt, have you heard of Captain America?" For a moment, Aunt was stunned. She looked confused, as if she had forgotten to cry. "Ah, explosive news about billionaire Stark and Stark Industries?" Finally, it was pushed off the front page by more sensational reports. Temporarily stopped. An explosive news about the kidnapping of 11 children by the New York gang. It swept the country through newspapers, media, television and online media. Shocked countless people. Those daily news of murder, robbery, murder, drug trafficking and gang fights. It is not enough to touch the numb nerves of most grassroots people. However, children are one of their few bottom lines. After all, children are the future and hope of countless people. In a short time, the phones of the New York Police Department and various district police stations were blown up by angry people. Even after a morning of fermentation and brewing, even the central nervous system of the entire country, the White House, had to come forward as soon as possible and hold a press conference, trying to appease the large number of grassroots people who took to the streets to protest. 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Countless men, women, young and old, with their families, shouting protest slogans, braved the gradually decreasing rain. Like wandering brainless zombies, they completely surrounded the police headquarters on Parklow Street. The angry and fast-moving demonstrators. They even did not spare the city hall across the street. They surrounded them all in one go. No one was allowed to enter or leave. At the same time, inside the police headquarters, in the chief's office, the white mayor with fluffy brown hair was furious. He danced and roared in anger. The sound was so loud that even the police passing by in the corridor outside the door could hear it clearly. "I allocate so much budget to you every year despite the strong opposition from other departments. And as the police chief, is this how you repay my kindness in the end? John, 8 billion. Your police budget is 8 billion every year, and it's rising every year." The mayor of New York, who used to be well-dressed in a suit, now blushed. Like a redneck from rural Kansas, spit flew from the corners of his mouth. It's the White House. Even the White House called me. Mr. President asked me what happened in New York. I didn't know. I don't know anything at all. It was Mr. President who told me personally that the gangs in New York City have grown so big that they kidnap children everywhere. John, what the hell have you done all these years? What achievements have you made as the commissioner of the New York Police Department? Are you sleepwalking at work? The most important thing is, my re-election as mayor next year is completely ruined, do you understand? At this moment, the angry mayor of New York trembled all over. The inexhaustible anger was like the tide of the Hudson River. Almost wave after wave, it surged towards the ugly black chief. The black chief, who couldn't get a word in, could only stand alone behind his desk and let the other party scold him crazily. "Ah, I'm so tired." Finally, the mayor of New York, who seemed to be exhausted, stopped roaring. He reached out and tugged at his expensive luxury tie. Staring with a pair of bloodshot eyes, he said indifferently, "Now, I can listen to your explanation. But, John, please be as brief as possible. A large number of people outside are still waiting for me to come out and appease them." The expressionless black chief was silent for a moment, and suddenly said, "I have nothing to defend myself. Such a bad child kidnapping case has occurred in New York City. It must be the main responsibility of the New York police and me as the police chief. I can't shirk it at all. However, I want to reiterate some points. The expansion of gangs and the increase in crime index are not problems that can be solved by the police working hard. This may be an economic problem, or perhaps a racial and cultural problem, or even an institutional problem worthy of discussion by the White House." The black chief changed his tone. "But this is not a simple multiple-choice question like the police catching thieves. John. Fuck you." The mayor of New York, whose face suddenly turned red, cursed subconsciously. But then, the mayor of New York with fluffy brown hair. As if he had regained his arrogant mentality of planning and strategizing. He looked cold and said indifferently, "For the sake of our years of working together, John, prepare your resignation letter. I will give you a decent pension and superficial respect. John, you really disappoint me." As soon as the words fell, the indifferent mayor of New York turned around. He left the office without looking back. At the same time, the black chief who had been expressionless suddenly reached out to support the table. He slowly sat back in the chair that still belonged to him temporarily. He fell into silence, as the chief of the New York Police Department. Black John knows a lot of things, even more than the mayor of New York. He knows why humans kill and rob. He also understands why humans murder and sell drugs. He even accidentally discovered that the kidnapping of children by gangs in New York has never been a big news that shocked the whole country. Kidnapping children is just a mature, stable industry chain belonging to criminals. Even if it is just one link, the profit that can be obtained is very considerable. Policeman John tried to solve similar problems from a legal perspective. But it wasn't until Cop John became the chief of police. The entire industrial chain has never disappeared, but has become more prosperous. Every year, hundreds of children go missing in New York City alone. If we count the whole country and even the entire America, it would be an astronomical number. Thinking of this, the black director suddenly closed his eyes in pain. There was nothing he could do about it. Dong dong dong. At this moment, a knock on the door interrupted the black director's depressed mood. He took a deep breath and said, "Come in." A moment later, a middle-aged policeman hurriedly pushed open the door and entered. There is a thick stack of case reports under his arm. "Director, the basic information on the murder case and child abduction case has been initially completed." The middle-aged policeman stepped forward and spread the case report in front of the black chief. "How are the kids?" The black director looked at the case report and asked casually. They're in pretty good condition. None of them were injured. They should be eating chocolate cake at the moment, right?" The middle-aged policeman forced a smile and said, "However, because the children are needed to provide testimony to help fix the various evidences in the murder and kidnapping cases, the FBI has prohibited their parents from leaving with the children. Go tell the FBI to get out of here." The black director frowned and glanced down at the case report. "As long as there is no order from above, the investigation power of several cases can only belong to the New York Police Department." Before he finished speaking, the black director suddenly dropped the heavy case report, raised his head and asked, "Uncle Red Turban? Man with green face? Brother Chocolate Cake? Is this the testimony provided by the children? Where's your age? What's your appearance? What's your race? You've been busy for a long time, haven't you even investigated the basic situation?" "Investigated. And there are detailed explanations in the report." The middle-aged policeman hurriedly leaned forward, flipped through the report a few times, pointed to one page and explained. Through a brief exchange with the children and an on-site investigation by forensic experts, the psychological experts synthesized several characteristics that fit the suspect's image. Age between 20 and 40 years old, white or yellow, with a military training background, mercenary or retired soldier, good at cold weapon combat, and possessing a strong sense of counter-reconnaissance. There are basically no traces left at the scene. Any useful clues? Hiss. Frank Custer. The black director suddenly opened his eyes wide and took a breath of air. He is back. Well, maybe it's not him. The middle-aged policeman smiled bitterly in sympathy. According to information disclosed by the FBI, Frank has been operating at the border recently and has exchanged fire with many Mexican gangs. It is said that the fighting there is quite tragic. What about the short-horned demon from Hell's Kitchen? The black director made a guess again, but then shook his head and rejected it. The short-horned demon usually only operates in Hell's Kitchen, and his methods of doing things are not that cruel. The most important thing is that he doesn't kill people. In an instant, the black chief and the middle-aged policeman suddenly looked at each other in tacit understanding. However, the looks in each other's eyes were filled with shock. Perhaps, there is a new one in our New York City. A ruthless character. Usually, a lie requires more lies to cover it up. Google search reading. But Rorschach's lies synthesize the true history of the world. The upcoming future and its possibilities. He just told some things that had not happened yet in advance to increase his persuasiveness. Moreover, compared to Rorschach who kills people like chickens. As an ordinary person, it is easier for my aunt to accept the story of a familiar World War II hero with noble personality who rises from the coffin to save the world. And Rorschach is just a small supporting character in the story who is carried away by passion. Of course, Rorschach did not expect her aunt to believe everything. As long as my aunt is no longer surprised by things that are beyond common sense. For example, his body shape will change rapidly in the coming period. For example, more money or equipment from unknown sources, etc. Even if my aunt was half convinced, she would not report Rorschach, but would choose to protect him. And wait until Stark reveals his identity as a superhero. After starting a chaotic era where villains and heroes are everywhere. Luo Xia believes that her aunt will gradually get used to it. After explaining everything, Rorschach made lunch for his aunt who was sitting on the sofa doubting life. Then I started busy with other things. Strengthening of the basement has been completed and the borrowed tools need to be returned. Rorschach also needs to handle the renovation and preparation of the restaurant. After all, my aunt's career is also a career, and it can be regarded as a kind of spiritual sustenance. Even though Rorschach still had a lot of money left, he didn't dare to take it out for a while. He was afraid that the stimulation would be too much and that his aunt wouldn't be able to digest it. Being angry can cause cerebral hemorrhage. The filial Luo Xia turned to look at her aunt before going out. I found my aunt fiercely stuffing lunch into her mouth. While counting the banknotes with one hand, he occasionally made a few vague murmurs and chuckles from his mouth. Is this going well? Rorschach breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he cautiously said hello to his aunt, and in exchange for a blank look from her aunt not to bother her, Luo Xia walked out of the room with a smile. This is what family means, and this is what drives Rorschach to fight. Rorschach first went to the basement of the apartment and packed all the tools and equipment. He lifted it up easily and returned to the second floor of the apartment. Mr. Herman Schultz was the neighbor who kindly lent Rorschach tools. However, he recently lost his job and could only stay at home. Rorschach knocked on the door and expressed his gratitude to Mr. Schultz, who was haggard due to unemployment. Then he offered to hire the other party to renovate the delicious Chinese restaurant. Mr. Schultz, whose hands were covered with calluses and was tall, was suddenly excited, and even his dark-skinned face showed some luster. Just a simple job can make the other person feel refreshed instantly. Rorschach began to discuss the construction period and price with the other party. Furthermore, Rorschach rejected Mr. Schultz's deliberately lowered salary. Instead, they offered a price that was higher than what was on the market, which was considered a thank you to the other party for lending them the tools. Mr. Schultz is extremely grateful. After agreeing to meet in detail tomorrow morning, Rorschach left the apartment. The sky over New York is still cloudy. However, the rain gradually became sparse, leaving only continuous raindrops, falling tenaciously. However, there were only twos and threes and groups of people on the streets who were excited and had high morale. Even some uninformed passers-by quickly obtained the news and learned about the situation. He also joined the parade with great indignation and shouted slogans to protect children. Obviously, this public opinion storm started by Rorschach himself has just entered the first half. And there are signs of intensification. Like an ordinary citizen who didn't know anything, Rorschach walked against the crowd and walked towards the nearby supermarket. Maybe it's because of Rorschach's muscular physique. Or maybe it's because of his fierce temperament. In short, Rorschach keeps moving forward. The people around him all subconsciously avoided it, as if afraid of touching Rorschach at all. And Rorschach was thinking about something he was about to buy. I didn't pay much attention to it. He just lowered his head slightly, pulled up the hood of his sportswear, and quickened his pace at the same time. Rorschach never had any dress code, because his aunt used to take him shopping. Therefore, when Rorschach faced the dazzling array of clothing types, his eyes were blank. So, he could only choose some clothes that looked strong and durable, and told the salesperson that there were 10 pieces of the same style. Rorschach finished the clothing simply and crudely, and then bought 5 pairs of sturdy and durable military boots. In this way, whether it is daily life or killing people and buying goods, they can meet the requirements. Rorschach carried a lot of heavy bags and paid neatly. However, before Rorschach was satisfied, he stepped out of the store. 2 white policemen who were sweating profusely and obviously lacked exercise suddenly stopped in front of Rorschach. At the same time, a young policeman with freckles on his face carefully placed one hand on the holster on his waist and said with alert eyes, "Sir, please stop any action temporarily. At the same time, show your ID or driver's license." Luo Shaw frowned slightly. There was a flash of cold light in his eyes, which was fleeting. I saw him slowly showing a smile. Very friendly asked, "Hello, officer, what happened?" "Nothing serious, just someone called the police and reported seeing a tracksuit gangster." Another middle-aged policeman glanced at Rorschach for a few times. The whole person's state was obviously much more relaxed. He smiled and said, "But apparently the people who called the police were mistaken. You are not a Slav." Before he finished speaking, Luo Shaw still kept smiling, but the tight muscles in his body relaxed instantly. It was just a temporary inspection, so he didn't need to go to war. Thoughts swirl. Rorschach shook his head slightly and pretended to complain. "Damn, I just went out to enjoy some shopping." The middle-aged policeman shrugged helplessly and said, "Sorry sir, please show me your ID and then you can leave." Rorschach put down what he was carrying. He took out the ID he carried with him from his pocket. The middle-aged policeman took it casually and after looking at it for a few times, gave it back to Rorschach. He said apologetically again, "Sorry to disturb your schedule." Rorschach nodded, took the purchased items, and left them all. Wait until Rorschach's back disappeared into the crowd. The middle-aged policeman walked up to the depressed-looking young policeman expressionlessly and whispered, "The age is incorrect. The report says the suspect is between 20 and 40 years old. Although the young man just now has a strong body, he is only 18 years old and has too much development. Shouldn't we be arresting the criminals in the sportswear gang? What's the point of searching for a murder suspect? Didn't you read the report? That suspect is the hero who saved the child." The young policeman's face was full of indignation, and he roared with suppressed anger. "You are so naive. If the suspect who kills the gangster is a hero, then who are we as police officers?" The middle-aged policeman sneered, expressionless. Then, he suddenly said to the young policeman, "Forget it, you go to the car and rest. I'll go back after looking around." I saw the young policeman walking out of the mall angrily. The expressionless middle-aged policeman quickly took out his mobile phone and started recording something. I saw the interface that the mobile phone opened. More than a dozen names have been recorded densely. ID number and home address. These were all the suspects he had stopped and checked before. Rorschach's information was also recorded by the middle-aged police officer. After everything is done, the middle-aged policeman hesitated for a moment and chose to send it. "Damn it, I'll at least triple my black money this month, otherwise the current situation will make it too risky to help them." The middle-aged policeman muttered to himself. Rorschach was walking home with the clothes he purchased. Although the police interrogation was an unexpected situation. But it didn't exceed his expectations. His superficial identity is clean. The way I handled things before was also cautious and neat. Rorschach had no fear of police investigation. So the whole thing was forgotten by him. However, the New York police have been under great pressure recently. There will definitely be raids on gang territory. Rorschach plans to harvest gang warehouses. The plan to replenish the simulator resources may need to be postponed for a while. At least the reports need to die down. Let's talk about it after the storm of public opinion in society subsides. Simply put, the cooldown time of the latest simulator wasn't very long either. Rorschach also doesn't have to waste precious time switching resources. Wait until Rorschach returns home. I found that my aunt had collected all the cash. As Rorschach put down his clothes, his aunt told him about hiring Mr. Schultz to decorate. My aunt couldn't agree more. And verbally praised Rorschach's behavior. Moreover, what surprised him even more? An aunt who seems to be gradually accepting the setting of the world. He even started to make insidious inquiries. Questions like whether Rorschach would go on some dangerous missions and participate in operations. Rorschach instantly had a headache. He could only use the excuse of his low status to get through. Counting the time, Captain America should have woken up and is adapting to modern life. If it weren't for fear of attracting SHIELD's attention. Adding more unnecessary trouble, Rorschach would rather get to know the captain. After all, the world of a World War II soldier was much simpler than that of a billionaire. Early the next morning, the clouds over New York have dispersed and the sun is shining. In a hurry, Rorschach found Mr. Schultz, who was preparing for work. The two men were just about to leave the apartment. But he was chased down by his aunt, who was fresh and energetic after washing up. She put on a pair of hard-wearing gray work clothes, and even her short hair was tied up, making her look cleaner and neater. After a short rest, my aunt's unmistakable strong woman temperament gradually recovered. At this time, she opened her eyes wide, stared at Luo Shaw, and said in a solemn tone, "Wake up, Rorschach, your weekend is over. Did you forget the lessons you were going to study in the morning?" And facing the aggressive aunt, Rorschach, who was strong and muscular, was helpless. He didn't want to go to high school to waste time. Occasionally go out to kill gangsters and rob each other's warehouses. Not happy enough. However, no matter how much Rorschach spent his words last night, he just couldn't convince his old-fashioned aunt. Even at the end of the dispute, Rorschach tried to bring out the Captain America sign. The aunt said resolutely, "If the mighty Captain America needs an 18-year-old kid who hasn't graduated from high school to save the world, then I see the world being destroyed. There's no way to save it. Even if God comes tomorrow morning, Buddha appears, even if aliens invade the earth. You, Rorschach, still have to go to school for me. At least you have to get a high school graduation certificate. This matter is non-negotiable." Rorschach finally chose to surrender. "But after getting up in the morning, I plan to skip class and talk about it later." However, it seems that my aunt is more skilled and has already figured out Luo Shaw's little thoughts. Facing the aggressive aunt, Luo Shaw spread her hands and said helplessly, "I surrender, I'm going to class. Aunt, please be safe and don't get too tired." "Humph, brat, do you still need to say this?" The victorious aunt rolled her eyes at Rorschach. Perhaps after the recent spate of mental stimulation, my aunt also found a better way to deal with the whole fucked up world. The aunt warmly greeted the confused Mr. Schultz, walked out of the apartment, and took a taxi to leave. Rorschach shook his head and pushed his bicycle out of the apartment as if resigned to his fate. But when Rorschach was blown by the breeze, he suddenly thought of a way. Take a day off, take a long vacation. The excuse is simple and true. The family restaurant was robbed, and the shadowed family needed his long-term companionship. In the streets, Rorschach kept crossing the chaotic traffic and grinned. Even the force of stepping on his feet seemed to be much stronger. Fight with others, fight with aunt. The fun is endless. An hour later, Midtown High School in New York. Through Rorschach's vivid and touching detailed description, the grade director and teachers were moved and convinced by Rorschach's behavior. Rorschach successfully obtained a privilege. Because there are only 3 months left before summer vacation, As long as Rorschach passes several makeup exams and passes the exam, he does not need to go back to school. And there is no delay in Rorschach getting his diploma and attending the graduation ceremony. So, Rorschach walked out of the school with a smile on his face. He plans to go home and brush up on his high school knowledge. Nowadays, Rorschach's killing skills are so perfect that it is not an exaggeration to call him Doctor of Beheading. It's the familiar knowledge. It seemed that he was gradually digesting it. At this moment, Luo Sha frowned, and the muscles all over his body suddenly tightened. Someone is constantly spying on him. At this moment, Rorschach was on a street outside Zhongcheng High School. The students who were supposed to attend the class had already entered the school. There were not even a few passers-by on the whole street. It seemed that most people had joined the protest march surrounding the New York Police Department to join in the fun. Police. Or gangs. Rorschach's mind turned. If it was the police, then there was no need to spy now. Just come up and siege them. If Rorschach resisted fiercely, it would not be illegal to shoot him to death. But if it was a gang, wouldn't these guys like to shoot first and ask questions later? Squeak. Just as Rorschach stopped and was secretly alert, a van parked on the side of the road suddenly started. The tires made a harsh sound with the ground, and quickly came in front of Rorschach. Rorschach was about to turn over and dodge subconsciously. But he stopped his body's instinct. Crash! The door of the van suddenly opened, and a pistol with a black muzzle was pointed at Rorschach. At the same time, a male voice with a Slavic accent slowly floated out of the car. Mr. Rorschach, the sportswear gang wants to find you to find out something and hope you can cooperate. However, at this time, facing the deadly threat from the gang, Rorschach was silent for a moment and slowly narrowed his eyes. He tried to squeeze out a twisted smile on his face that was hard to tell whether it was fear or excitement. Please don't shoot. I will definitely cooperate with you. Before he finished speaking, Rorschach actually took the initiative to step forward and sat in the empty seat of the van. And it seemed that Rorschach's cooperation and initiative surprised the man with the gun. After a moment of hesitation, he took out an airtight black hood from his pocket and motioned Rorschach to put it on himself. Then he turned his head and told the driver, "Drive, old place." The van door closed, the engine roared, and Rorschach, who had just put on the hood. Under the dark fabric, a bloodthirsty smile gradually bloomed. You asked for this. I just want to be an ordinary citizen. Why is it so difficult? Rorschach closed his eyes. Google search reading. The truck speeds up and goes straight. The truck stopped and accelerated. The truck goes left, right. After a minute, Rorschach stopped forcing himself to memorize the route. Apparently, the driver was overly cautious. Every time you drive a certain distance, you have to go around in circles again and again. It was as if he was avoiding tracking or police inspection. 20 minutes later, the box truck enters Hell's Kitchen. And past several dilapidated and desolate streets. Finally, they drove into a factory with an old signboard of Fatsy Auto Repair Shop hanging on it. Wow! The box truck stopped suddenly. Immediately afterwards, the car door was opened by someone. At the same time, Rorschach's ears. The man with a thick Slavic accent said, "Mr. Rorschach, get out of the car." At this time, Rorschach, wearing a black mask, seemed like a passerby who had nothing to do with him. He stood up slowly and stepped out of the car. The whole person's movements are leisurely and casual. There was no panic at all after being kidnapped. Both feet hit the ground. Rorschach, whose hands were not tied, took off his black mask and squinted his eyes to look at the surrounding environment. This appears to be an auto repair shop. It looks like this place has been abandoned for a long time. Even the oil stains on the ground were covered with a layer of dust. But there are still some repair tools covered by raincloths piled in the corner. And several scrapped engines, a reminder of past glory. Hello. At this moment, not far from Rorschach, a bald white man who was chatting with his accomplices apparently noticed the hostages' unusual movements. The bald white man's eyes flashed fiercely and he cursed at the top of his lungs. Damn it! Who told you to take off your hood? Before he finished speaking, the bald white man stepped forward. It seems that he intends to teach Rorschach a lesson he will never forget. However, gun-toting Slavic men also jumped out of the box truck. He restrained the grumpy bald white man. Joseph, forget it, he is very cooperative. Rorschach, who squinted his eyes, heard the sound and ran away. I noticed the height of the Slavic man in front of me. Much shorter than normal people. Even if you are wearing heavy height increasing shoes. He is only about 1.6 meters tall. In front of the truck door, the short man with a Slavic accent moved his steps. He stared at the expressionless Rorschach and said very politely, "Mr. Rorschach, please come with me," etc. Rorschach, who frowned slightly, looked at the scattered figures again, and then a heavy look of disappointment appeared on his face. "Is this all you have in the sportswear gang? Even counting the driver who just opened the door and got out of the car?" There were only 4 people in the factory. The dwarf was quickly alerted by Rorschach's words and raised his gun. A bald white man not far from Rorschach. And behind the bald white man, there was a strong black man who just stood up with a machete. "Hey, kid, we're not some bullshit gangster. We're the professionals they hired at a high price to deal with the problem. Listen up, professionals." The bald white man suddenly grinned, his tone full of sarcasm. Then he twisted his neck a few times. The whole person strode forward. He opened a pair of thick arms and pounced on Rorschach. A hired killer. Luo Sha shook his head slightly, with regret on his face. Suddenly, his whole body suddenly lowered his back. The tight muscles all over the body were released in an instant, and an extremely powerful explosive force surged out. Rorschach's feet slipped and stepped. In the blink of an eye, he passed by the bald white man coming towards him. And, he took advantage of the brief moment when the bald white man opened his eyes wide and fell into shock. "Move your steps and hide behind the opponent." Boom. At the same time, the dull sound of gunshots suddenly rang out, and blood splashed everywhere. However, the one who screamed was the bald white man who was used as a human shield by Rorschach. For a moment, the short man who fired the gun seemed to be shocked by Rorschach's swiftness. He accidentally injured his men. This caused him to enter a state of despair. He can dodge bullets. For now, Rorschach can't resist bullets. However, he has been strengthened by 2 simulators. Both the explosive power and reaction speed are far beyond the level of ordinary people. Besides, it wasn't bullets he was trying to dodge. It's just the enemy's muzzle turning. Everything happens in a flash of lightning. The bald white man screamed, covering his shoulder that had been shot and shaking. But Rorschach had already been there at the moment when the gunfire rang out. He suddenly turned his body around and stepped hard on the ground with his feet. He was like a beast flying close to the ground, rushing towards the dwarf who was the biggest threat in the audience. In the blink of an eye, Rorschach was in front of the other party. The smell of tobacco in the rapid breathing, the bloodshot eyes on the whites, and the muzzle of the gun turning again. The expressionless Rorschach mobilizes all his senses to detect all information about the enemy. In an instant, the dwarf had no time to react before Rorschach grabbed his wrist. I saw the muscles on Rorschach's arms bulging and the tendons bulging out. Click. With a crisp sound, the dwarf's wrist holding the gun was instantly twisted, with bones and tendons broken. Immediately afterwards, before the other party could feel the pain of fracture. Click. Rorschach, with cold eyes, raised his foot and kicked the dwarf on the knee. Well, in an instant, the short man's face turned red first, and then turned pale. At the same time, Rorschach snatched the pistol from Duan's hand. Let the opponent fall to the ground. Then, Rorschach's hair stood on end and he turned around again. He ran head-on into the strong black man who had already rushed forward. I saw the strong black man's eyes wide open with anger. Drink. A roar came from his mouth. The sharp machete flashed with cold light and struck Rorschach head-on. However, Rorschach easily turned his shoulders. He turned sideways to avoid the sharp edge of the machete. Then, he suddenly crouched down. That's not how a knife is used. Rorschach, with a stern look in his eyes, suddenly raised the muzzle of his gun and pulled the trigger continuously. Bang bang bang. In an instant, the hot bullet penetrated the outstretched arm of the strong black man. Ah! The strong black man suddenly let out a scream. The fingers holding the handle of the knife were unable to loosen, and the sharp machete suddenly fell. Luo Sha's free left hand caught the sharp machete in midair and held it horizontally in front of him. His crouching body leapt forward. The sharp blade of the machete has been embedded into the entire abdomen of the strong black man. Laugh. After a brief pause, the sound of blood splattering echoed around. The strong black man was disemboweled. And Rorschach seemed to have just accomplished a trivial thing. With an expressionless face, he quickly stood up without any joy. He threw the machete violently in the direction of the driver. In an instant, gunshots, shouts, broken bones, and the crackling sound of the internal organs falling to the ground. The driver felt endless panic and fell into the abyss. Bang! Seeing the body of the strong black man gradually falling to the ground, making a loud noise. The driver with dull eyes subconsciously touched the gun behind his waist. Unfortunately, it's too late. Because, a sharp machete has come roaring. Puff! The sharp edge of the machete shattered. But it was also deeply embedded between the driver's forehead. Call. Wait until the driver's stiff body falls to the ground. Rorschach, whose face was filled with murderous intent, slowly exhaled and relaxed a lot. It takes less than a minute. 2 enemies were killed and 2 wounded. And he just finished warming up. Rorschach took a deep breath of the blood-smelling air. Then he slowly walked over to the wounded man who was still struggling and wailing. First question, how did you find me? Rorschach asked with narrowed eyes. Alas, nothing but a groan of pain. He didn't get any answers. And right now, the bald white man who was shot in the shoulder seemed to be accustomed to the pain, and seemed to be irritated by Rorschach's understatement. He was curled up on the ground and suddenly raised his head. A pair of eyes full of resentment stared at Rorschach viciously, and he gritted his teeth. It's you. It must be you. You are. Boom. Rorschach, expressionless, pulled the trigger. In an instant, the bald white man's mouth exploded and his teeth flew out. Ho ho. A large amount of blood poured into his trachea, causing his eyes to turn white and he fell into a state of suffocation. Do you need me to repeat the question? Rorschach, who was blinking, suddenly turned his head and looked at the dwarf who was lying on the ground, unable to move, with a sincere look in his eyes. No, no need at all, staring at the young man in front of him who looked like a murderous maniac. The short man, who was sweating profusely, shook his head and shouted desperately, regardless of the injuries on his hands and feet. List. The tracksuit gang gave us a list. As long as it matches the characteristics of the suspect known by the police, we will follow and analyze it according to the information on the list, until we find the real culprit who killed the leader and caused huge loss of profits. And, they made an offer we couldn't refuse. Tisk, not only is the expenditure huge, but the person who came up with the whole plan is also a genius. Luo Shah squinted his eyes and couldn't help but praise him again and again. But the tone seemed to be full of ridicule. Let's not talk about the period of public opinion storm. How many people in black and white forces would be offended by kidnapping hostages everywhere under pressure from the police? They didn't even seem to have a plan for when they found the real culprit. Even if Rorschach is not the real murderer, wouldn't the kidnapped hostages resist? Are these so-called professionals too unprofessional? We are acting in full compliance with the employer's requirements. According to the age order on the list, you're the youngest among all targets. Chapo seemed to know Rorschach's thoughts. His eyes showed regret and unwillingness, and he said with a wry smile. We just wanted to use you to practice and familiarize yourself with the procedures, but we didn't expect. I didn't expect that God would bless me. I was so lucky that I found the target first, right? The expressionless Rorschach raised his eyebrows and suddenly asked. If you don't want to die, tell me where the current headquarters of the sportswear gang is and I'll spare your life. It's in Hell's Kitchen, in that long-abandoned treasure mall. It seems that he has seen the hope of survival. The dwarf's face became much ruddy, and he said very cooperatively. Because the New York police and ordinary people are looking for trouble with them, in order to reduce the loss of gang interests, their leaders choose to gather the core members together, so that they can resist for a while in case of danger. If you cooperate so well, how can I believe that what you say is true? Rorschach stared at the dwarf with his eyes flickering. Besides, betraying customers is not a taboo in your industry. Business, this is just a failed business. If you say it, I may live, but if you don't say it, I will definitely die. I believe you won't spread this matter everywhere. Maybe, we can become partners in some things in the future. I can even be your eyes and ears in the underground world. The dwarf tried to prop up his upper body, looked at Rorschach with sincere eyes, and said slowly. Bang! Just when the dwarf thought that Rorschach's silence meant that he was moved. The sound of gunfire suddenly rang out. A blood hole suddenly appeared on the dwarf's forehead. He moved his lips silently, and the light in his eyes dimmed instantly. "You talk too much nonsense." Rorschach made his final comment. Then, he flipped his palm. The pistol with few bullets left was completely absorbed and became a resource for the simulator. Open black lens bracket currently consumable cooling time, 6 days and 6 hours 150 hours close black lens bracket. Rorschach took a look at the simulator. At this time, there were still 9 hours before the next simulation. Rorschach decisively consumed the time for resource conversion. Ended the cooldown of the simulator. However, he did not simulate immediately. Instead, he turned around and cleaned up the traces of the battle in the factory. After Rorschach searched the driver for another gun. He did not choose to absorb it, but stuffed it into his pocket. Rorschach could not guarantee the dead professionals. The dwarf was telling the truth. But he did not plan to wait for the opportunity. He wanted to uproot the entire sportswear gang. Cut the grass and root it out. Since these guys don't know when to stop and are not afraid of death. Then, they will become corpses completely. So, Rorschach needs weapons. A lot of weapons. Unfortunately, Rorschach searched the entire factory. But he found that this place was an abandoned place. There was no hidden gun warehouse. There was no other stuff that could be used to kill people. Except for a pile of oily car repair tools in the corner. At this time, Rorschach frowned slightly and turned on the simulator directly. He was ready to try his luck. I hope the Emperor will bless me and simulate a firearm produced by the Empire. Even if it is an ordinary Astra Militarum laser pistol. The power is far beyond the current gunpowder weapons. Open black lens bracket simulation is starting, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket current identity, Katachan recruit, Krieg Grenadier. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Please select the identity to descend first. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. If you refuse, you will descend randomly. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Identity selected, Krieg Grenadier. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Simulation is starting, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You have descended into the Warhammer universe. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Time, unknown. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Location, unknown. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You set foot on the surface of the planet. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You find yourself in a city where bloody sacrifices are taking place. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Before you can pick up nearby weapons, you are surrounded by a group of cultists in purple robes. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You attack with your bare hands, but are squeezed tightly by more cultists around you, and soon you can't even move a finger. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You fall into an unsolvable dilemma and try to bite your tongue to commit suicide and offer your loyalty to the Emperor. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You suddenly find with horror that your consciousness can't even drive a muscle. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The Lord of Change wants to see you. The cultists with purple eyes said in unison. Close black lens bracket. You are gradually wrapped in disgusting, sticky and slippery tentacles. You cannot control any part of your body, and even your eyelids cannot close. Open black lens bracket. You can only watch as 9 cultists lift you up high. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You slowly move towards the center of the city, like a sacrifice to be served on the chaos table. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You try to turn your eyes away, but then you find sadly that there seems to be no human in the whole city who can save you. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The ruined streets are full of dead Krieg soldiers and local defenders, burning Lehman Russ tanks and Thunderhawk gunboats that have fallen to the ground. You even see a half-kneeling Terminator power armor that is completely submerged by countless cultist corpses. Even such a powerful Astartes has died. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The Empire's resistance and counterattack have failed. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You gradually wake up in despair. The planet in front of you seems to have been completely occupied by the chaos forces and has become a fallen death world. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket every 9 meters forward, a cultist in a purple robe will come out from the dark corner of the city, holding a bloody corpse sacrifice of a mortal, and join this grand parade carnival with joy. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. They are praising, they are praying, they are calling. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You want to roar, you want to scold, but you seem to be powerless. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are too sad, your mental state seems to be abnormal. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. A faint murmur begins to appear in your ears. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. As the cultists continue to advance, even the sky is gradually filled with a terrifying purple halo. Open black lens bracket. The air is filled with a disgusting chaotic breath and bloody stench. The priests of the sect, holding staffs and chanting prayers under their hoods, also join the parade. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. A large number of mortal corpses, regardless of gender, age or age, are pulled up by wisps of purple halo. There are even some living people who are wailing and struggling. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Your eyes are bloodshot and your head is dizzy. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are stubbornly resisting the corruption of chaos and you remain loyal. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are in a trance and you begin to pray to the Emperor sincerely, begging for his mercy. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This grand sacrificial procession has reached its end. A dazzling purple halo is reflected above the sky. The buildings in the center of the city are covered with layers of sticky and smelly mortal flesh. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. A huge flesh pedestal watered with the flesh and blood of hundreds of millions of mortals stands tall in the center of the city. Above the pedestal, a chaos portal several hundred meters high almost splits half of the sky and is reflected in your drowsy and blurred vision. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Countless pink and blue horrors are jumping and dancing around the flesh pedestal. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. They are chirping, they are singing, and they are repeating spells with unknown effects. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Under the protection of countless chaos minions, a huge two-headed birdman with black wings on his back and wearing a white robe is looking at you who are held high by the cultists with his two bird heads with interest. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Oh, poor but lucky mortal. The two-headed birdman's long beaks collided, making a series of terrifying low sounds, and the other long beak immediately exclaimed, "My Lord bless. Is it him?" Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You were handed under the two-headed birdman by the crazy cultists. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. One by one, the pink horror monsters lay on your back, trying to support your body, so that you face the more terrifying scene in front of you. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The two-headed birdman flapped his huge wings a few times, and the two bird heads swayed back and forth, strolling in front of you. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. One bird-headed head calls himself Carlos, the Fate Weaver, the Lord of Change, and the other bird-headed head sneers in a low voice. Just hearing the restrained whisper of the two-headed birdman, your brain has begun to scream wildly, and your mental will seems to be about to collapse. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are forced to open your eyes and tears of blood flow out. For a moment, you are living a life worse than death. You keep praying to the Emperor. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Carlos, the Fate Weaver, seems to see through your stupid ideas. One bird-headed head keeps mocking that the salted meat who plays witchcraft will not come, because this world is blessed by the Lord God. The other bird-headed head keeps making tempting words. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Your coming and disappearing have attracted the attention of the God of Chaos. Even if the salted meat who plays witchcraft wants to try hard to hide your traces, you are lucky enough to appear in the territory of chaos. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. As long as you nod and agree, you will get everything you want. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Power, knowledge, wealth, and everything that exists in the universe. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. If you join chaos voluntarily, you will be promoted to the Demon Prince by the Chaos God. You don't have to endure the troubles of life and death, nor do you have to worry about the hostility of salted meat. Carlos's bird-headed head persuaded you step by step. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, thinking for a long time, wanting to know, knowing a lot, thirsting for thinking, only the saints and the strange, are not trapped. Another bird-headed head twisted and shook, and made a harsh praise. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. It seemed that Carlos's praise attracted the attention of the Chaos God. The huge chaos portal in your vision kept shaking and twisting. The purple halo completely enveloped the planet. Countless chaos demons bowed their heads and knelt under the flesh and blood base. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Even, Fate Weaver, Carlos spread his huge wings, facing the direction of the portal, and his two bird-headed heads slowly drooped. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The whispers lingering in your ears become more terrifying, and your eyeballs seem to have reached their limit and shattered and exploded. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. But just as you fell into darkness, you seem to have seen through the purple halo of the chaos portal. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. An illusory white snake that kept twisting and crawling in place. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. A necklace blue lamp god. Every inch of its skin is covered with faces with different expressions, and each face repeats the words spoken by the master's head in a different tone. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. A ball of colorful mist, which does not make a sound itself, but will mutter to itself through the echoes between nearby buildings. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. A green-skinned man in an old gray suit, with an indescribable purple halo floating where his face should be. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Your thinking seems to have stagnated. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. In your mind, there is only one unrecognizable, but deeply engraved terrifying word that echoes repeatedly. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Zinch. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Accept it. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Throw yourself into chaos. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Embrace his blessing and become a demon prince who dominates the universe. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. More terrifying whispers penetrate your mind thoroughly. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Your spirit is about to collapse, and chaos is about to corrupt your will. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are on the verge of death. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You seem to see a flickering flame in the endless darkness with your blurred consciousness. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. That is your shaky life flame, your loyal heart. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Suddenly, an illusory palm is placed near the flame, blocking the surrounding darkness for the swaying flame. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You desperately look and find that it is a Catachan veteran who once fought side by side with you. He stands silently beside the flame and smiles at you. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. At the same time, another illusory palm is placed next to the flame. It is the Krieg Watch captain who died beside you. He or she wears a breathing mask and says nothing, just raises a thumb to you. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. One after another, phantom hands were placed near the flames, shielding you from the darkness. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You suddenly discovered that the owners of the phantom hands were mortals who died on the planets occupied by chaos, Krieg soldiers and native soldiers who died in battle, and Astartes who died of exhaustion and offered their loyalty. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. They didn't say anything, but silently guarded the flames while staring at you and smiling. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You have never fought alone. You fight for them and for all mankind. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Zinch. Get out of my head. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You suddenly murmured with a splitting headache and on the verge of death, and your voice gradually became louder. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. For the Emperor, close black lens bracket. Your broken eyelids keep trembling, and little flames gradually appear in the depths of a pair of dark holes. Open black lens bracket. Then, it burned like an exploding star. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. At the same time, a skeletal hand burning with subspace flames tightly grasped a catachan saber, smashing the pink horrors next to you, and gently supported your body that was about to fall. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket just behind you. Krieg soldiers wearing military coats and catachan veterans wearing red turbans appear out of thin air. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The flesh and blood on their bodies seemed to have completely turned into burning warp flames, and the endless anger from the Emperor burned the surrounding chaos demons. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Carlos's bird-headed head twisted wildly. In panic, the long beak slowly opened, and the terrifying psychic energy from the subspace was about to burst out. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. However, bombs heavily engulfed in subspace flames suddenly passed over your head and hit Carlos's other bird-headed head. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Destiny Weaver. Carlos' huge body kept shaking. Even if he only suffered a slight burn, he had to stop the brewing of the spell. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. A Terminator power armor with subspace flames burning all over its body takes heavy steps and approaches behind you. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Without command or slogans, countless mortal soldiers with only skeletons began to charge silently against the chaos demons surging in the distance. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Your hazy thoughts gradually become clearer, and the murmurs in your ears seem to have completely disappeared. Close black lens bracket. Even if you have lost your eyes, you can still clearly perceive everything happening around you in the darkness. Open black lens bracket. You tremble all over, your blood boils, and your loyalty to the Emperor becomes even stronger. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. A catachan saber burning with warp flames is thrust into your hand. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You hold it tightly, a smile belonging to all the dead appears on your miserable face. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You quickly prepared for battle, stepped forward with difficulty, and charged forward. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. All the soldiers from Krieg follow your steps, raising the bayonets on their laser guns. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The catachan veterans wearing red turbans waved their sabers and pulled the triggers of their firearms, constantly sweeping away the chaos demons that surged around them. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You roared with all your strength. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You raised the catachan saber towards the surprised Carlos the Fateweaver. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. A large amount of dazzling light like stars actually overflowed from your eyes and continued to float behind you, as if you were covered with a pair of huge invisible wings. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You stepped on the bodies of several dead demons in front of you and jumped up. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Chop chop chop. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. While you were in a trance, a vague whisper seemed to echo in your ears again, and then it disappeared in an instant. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You used all your strength to swing the catachan saber burning with warp flames. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Perhaps it was the Emperor's blessing that you penetrated Carlos's bird-headed head with great precision, blinding one of its eyes. Close black lens bracket. Destiny Weaver. Carlos roared in pain, and the flames from the subspace severely burned the rude bird-headed head. Open black lens bracket. The extremely terrifying chaotic psychic energy burst out from Carlos instantly, shattering your arms, shoulders and the rest of your body. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You had no time to escape, and your body was torn apart by psychic energy. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are dead. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This simulation ended after 9 hours. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This simulation has a retainable option. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. 1. The Blessing and Curse of Tzeentch. Please choose carefully. Close black lens bracket. Note: Tzeentch is unhappy with your resistance, but he still generously gave you the blessing of becoming a demon prince. It's just that you may not be able to withstand the overwhelming power of chaos. Open black lens bracket. 2. Korn's Gaze and Blessing. Please choose carefully. Close black lens bracket. Note: Khorne has taken a liking to your refusal of Tzeentch's temptation. If you accept his blessing, be willing to become the chosen of Khorne. He will occasionally pay attention to your movements and give you more strength. Just want to kill, no loyalty required. Open black lens bracket 3. Plasma pistol that never overheats, Seiko sacred artifact, close black lens bracket. Note: the Emperor's gaze on you never leaves. Open black lens bracket. The simulation time is less than 24 hours, and the simulator loss has been waived. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Current available cooling time: 5 days and 21 hours, 141 hours. Close black lens bracket. The simulation ends. However, Rorschach in the factory couldn't help but open his eyes wide. He actually landed directly on a chaotic planet occupied by evil gods. If it weren't for the Emperor's blessing, it would be difficult for him to escape even if he couldn't commit suicide. It doesn't matter if you waste a simulation opportunity. However, what if Tzeentch lets Rorschach continue to live half dead? Rorschach couldn't help but gasp. He couldn't imagine how much cooldown time would be needed to make up for the simulator's losses. And you can't get reinforcements and equipment. Even now Rorschach is not considered weak. But facing the many villains of the local universe, such as ox demons and snake gods, they are still unable to do what they want. Rorschach made an important decision in an instant. Before every simulation in the future, he would pray to the Emperor. Receive the Emperor's blessing to prevent similar accidents from happening again. Relieved, Rorschach checked the simulator's rewards. He couldn't help but criticize Tzeentch for his small-mindedness. At the same time, he also had a headache about Khorne's favor. Sure enough, the Warhammer universe was not a world that he, a mere mortal, could traverse. Fortunately, Rorschach's simulator is just a simulation. Instead of real people going in. Otherwise, the desperate Rorschach can only choose to be loyal on the spot and return to the Golden Throne. Rorschach chose the third reward without hesitation. A simple-looking plasma pistol appeared in his hand. The excited Rorschach carefully looked at the sacred object in his hand. This appears to be a Mark III Sun Fury model plasma pistol. The iron-gray gun body exudes the cold luster of metal, which is eye-catching. The exposed heat sink area was slightly shiny, as if endless energy was brewing inside. Never overheat. Rorschach did not hesitate, turned around and pulled the trigger continuously towards the fallen corpse in the factory. Sizzling. Dazzling electric balls the size of a human head were ejected from the muzzle in the blink of an eye. Before Rorschach could react, the few corpses in front of me completely turned into a small amount of ashes. Even part of the cement floor was melted by the high temperature, emitting an orange-red light. The power of the relic pistol far exceeded Rorschach's imagination. What's more important, there is no cooldown time for ordinary plasma pistols after firing continuously. As long as the battery has enough energy. The plasma pistol that never overheats is Rorschach's mobile turret. Rorschach held the plasma pistol, threw his head back and laughed. This seems to be the case for him in a while. It was the first time I laughed so happily. Like a naughty kid who got his beloved toy.